Hello, I'm Leo Saguiguit, and I'm excited to present this program of Filipino music for the Odyssey Chamber Music Series audience. My inspiration for creating this suite was from a book of violin arrangements that I found in a bookstore in the Philippines about 30 years ago, and when I was visiting my family. And even though I didn't play violin, I thought that maybe one day I could adapt these for saxophones. It's very difficult to find any kind of music for instruments other than piano, and even finding violin music was kind of a rarity. So after all these years, I'm really thrilled to be able to present some of this music for my own instrument and to present it to you. I was first introduced to Filipino folk music as a child, singing, a few children's songs, and also listening to my mom, who was playing them on the piano. She had brought over some sheet music from the Philippines when we arrived in the United States. And although I didn't really have an appreciation for that music when I was growing up, I always remember the familiar sound to them. And after my mother passed away in 2007, I began to reconnect with my heritage through this music. And in a way, it was also a way to honor the gift of music that she had provided for me. Although the music that you'll hear may not technically be considered folk music, since it was written in the early 20th century by classically trained composers, they all clearly have the sound and influence of traditional Filipino songs and dances. They also share the common folk themes of romance and courtship, patriotism, and the love of their natural surroundings. Filipinos are famously known for their love of singing, and in these modern times, it's usually done through a karaoke machine, which is incidentally patented by a Filipino. If you took a look at their favorite playlists, you could see the types of songs Filipinos are drawn to. And it's no different for these types of folk music. The characteristics of traditional Filipino music is unabashed sentimentality, the feeling of longing and melancholy, and also their sense of humor. So the four songs that I selected for this suite reflect these characteristics and the different musical styles. The first song in the suite, Sarung Banggi, means one evening. It's by Potenciano Gregorio. And so much of Filipino music begins with a minor key, but it will eventually move to a major key to reflect the change in emotions. And you'll definitely hear that in this song. It's about a lover who is waiting anxiously for his beloved. And as he hears the sad song of a bird, he eventually sees her face. The second song, Kata Kata Ka, How Surprising, by Santiago Suarez, is much lighter and charming in tone, and he uses a waltz-like meter to convey this character. It's about an unlikely couple who are joking around about their relationship, but as they start to hang out with each other and getting to know each other more and more, they realize that they're truly in love. The third song is by Constancio de Guzman, and it's probably one of the most famous Filipino songs. It's called Bayang Ko, which means my country. It's a nationalistic song, and it was written in 1928. This was when the Philippines was still a colony of the United States. And before that, for 300 years, it was a colony of Spain. So this music reflects the yearning after centuries to regain their country's independence and for the return of their land to the rightful people. The composer based his lyrics on a poem by Jose Corazon de Jesus, with a metaphor of a beautiful bird trapped in a gilded cage and his desire to set them free. This song also regained popularity in the mid-1980s when the country was trying to overthrow the dictator President Ferdinand Marcos. And the final selection of the suite is by Manuel Velez, and its title, Sa Kabukhiran, means in the farmland or in the countryside. This is really a joyful song that celebrates the idyllic beauty of the countryside with its flowers, the birds, the beautiful vistas of the mountains and the sky, and also the carefree lifestyle that it provides. Thank you for listening to this, and I really hope that you enjoy the music. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Deborah Lydia Redding, and I recently retired after 37 years as a violinist in the Colorado String Quartet. During that time, I was visiting professor in residence at Bard College. I'm here to talk about an upcoming concert on Friday, April 30th at 7 p.m. when the Odyssey Chamber Music Series will present one of the great chamber works of the 20th century, Contrasts by Bela Bartók. It will be played by 3 professors of music from Mizzou: violinist Julie Rosenfeld, clarinetist Wesley Warnhoff, and pianist Peter Miyamoto. During my almost 4 decades as a quartet violinist, I realized that, along with the 16 quartets by Beethoven, the 6 by Hungarian Bela Bartók are amongst the most important music written for string quartet. Now, many of you may reach for the mute button when I say that name, but I personally love to help audiences enjoy this music as much as I do, so I implore you to take a moment to learn a little about this music. First, some historical context. In the year 895, the Magyars, a nomadic tribe from the east, settled in the Carpathian Basin, which is now Hungary. After allying themselves with the Western powers, the Magyars' indigenous music and culture soon disappeared. Even after 300 years of Ottoman occupation, the formal music of Hungary remained Germanic, and the Eastern characteristics of Turkish and Romani, or Gypsy, music were suppressed. Bela Bartók was born in 1881 in Nagy-Szent Miklós, a town which is now part of Romania. A sickly child, he showed musical talent early and was educated at home by his mother. He began to compose at age 9 and first appeared in public as a pianist and composer when he was 11. He received his higher education at the Academy of Music in Budapest, focusing on the Germanic tradition of Brahms and Wagner. But when Bela Bartók was a young man, he overheard a housemaid singing a folk song of her native Magyar people. That encounter sparked a passion in Bartók for the unknown folk music of vanishing peasant cultures. Riding in horse-drawn wagons, he visited isolated villages of Romania, Slovakia, Ruthenia, Wallachia, to record on wax cylinders peasants singing not gypsy music, but their traditional autochthonous songs. His travels eventually took him as far as northern Africa. In 1938, as Europe was facing imminent catastrophe, Hungarian violinist József Saguiguit asked the jazz clarinetist Benny Goodman to fund the commission of a chamber work by Bartók for clarinet, violin, and piano. Here is a photo of the 3 of them recording this piece in 1940. And yes, you can still play this LP. This is the only chamber work in which Bartók combined wind and string instruments. He felt that the 3 instruments from 3 different families could not blend well. Obviously, he found a way. In contrast, he treated the clarinet and violin as soloists, exploiting each one's specific abilities. To that end, these 2 instruments are each given a cadenza, or solo, like in a concerto. In contrast, perhaps because he wrote the part for himself, the piano takes a back seat, providing a landscape of native Hungarian musical sounds, particularly the glissandi and tremolo of the cimbalom, an instrument found throughout Central Europe that looks like the inside of a piano but played with soft mallets. This would be similar to the hammered dulcimer of American folk music. I have asked my lovely assistant, Professor Julie Rosenfeld, to demonstrate some of the string techniques in this piece. First of all, the violin can play tremolo. There is glissando. In addition, there are several different kinds of pizzicato. First of all, there are chords, imitating the guitar or mandolin, but the violin can also, while playing with the bow and fingering with the left hand, pizzicato with the left hand at the same time. In addition, Bartók invented a new sound that now bears his name, where the pizzicato rebounds off the fingerboard, making a snap. Meanwhile, the clarinet plays throughout its wide range, specializing in large leaps from low notes to very high notes. The three movements of contrasts exemplify Bartók's synthesis of folk and art music. The first movement is a furbunkos, an 18th century recruiting dance from when the Austrian emperor needed young men for cannon fodder. The women of the village danced to a particular dotted rhythm of short, long, short, long. This is first heard in the clarinet while the violin strums like a guitar. A softer, smoother middle section features a pulsating rhythm in mudger style, short, long, short, long. This reflects the pattern of the Hungarian language, which always stresses the first syllable. This section contrasts the irony of the furbunkos with the pathos of the mourning women. The first movement ends with an extended cadenza by the clarinet. The middle movement is a relaxing melodic contrast to the outer two. The piano part here reflects Bartók's interest in the gamelan music of Indonesia. The third movement is a fast peasant dance and begins with the violin retuned or perhaps untuned. Maybe it's a second violin. Instead of perfect fifths, G, D, A, E, the strings are tuned as G sharp, D, A, and E flat. Sounding like this. Thank you. The contrasting middle section is written in a Bulgarian rhythm, alternating note values of 3 and 2 to create a rhythm of 13 beats, arranged as 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, otherwise known as 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. You got that? Okay, here we go with the violin. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. This beautiful, nostalgic melody reflects Bartók's sadness at the loss of his homeland to the ravages of the First World War. When the dance returns, we hear reflections of his early burlesque piano pieces in grotesque leaping motives and in cacophonous squawking, perhaps laughter. And in the snap pizzicato, all of which add an element of irony to the otherwise joyful music. After a virtuosic cadenza by the violin, the piece ends raucously and playfully. Now that you know something about this fascinating piece, I sincerely hope you will join Professors Wes Warrenhoff, Julie Rosenfeld, and Peter Miyamoto on Friday, April 30th at 7 p.m. when Odyssey presents Contrasts by Béla Bartók.